In other words, testifies to the truth of that religion's God existing?
The effectiveness of it.
Or just the effectiveness of the religion as what some sort of social...
Right, because when we find out that, for example, prayer works, when people say that, what we find is that it doesn't work better than chance, but in the situations where prayer may appear to be effective, it is along the same, it doesn't matter which God you pray to, which tells us that it's not the God or the religion involved. In those cases, it is the very act of praying, and it's not distinct from meditating or calming down and things like that. And that's why I'm saying that, okay, in those areas where there is a benefit, we know we can achieve those same benefits through purely secular means. And the reason I present this challenge in the first place is because it is important for us to identify what's the real cause. If we find a real benefit, we need to find the real cause. If the real cause is that there's a God up there that is enacting this and doing this and whatever else, that's valuable information. But if the real cause that this is the way our mind works, this is the way the brain, this is the steps that you take to do something effectively, that is the knowledge that is critical, because now we can continue down that path to find better and better ways of doing it. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
You want to get to callers?
Why not? Yeah, let's see some other folks who have been waiting for a while.
Yeah, Tyler in Atlanta.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
How you doing, Tyler?
Thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I talked to a guy who was on there last week. His name is Chris. I think he talked to you guys about souls.
Yeah.
And I think you guys weren't really catching on to what he was. I tried to talk to him for a couple of hours to try and figure out what he was saying, but
I've been in an extended email conversation with him for the last week.
Oh man, I thought he was kidding when he said he was going to email you.
No, and we've traded emails several times.
Oh really? Mm-hmm. Anything interesting he said, or could you relate to it, or was it just the same nonsense over and over?
Is this guy Chris attempting to give you evidence for souls?
Yes.
Okay.
And his evidence for souls is that he's convinced that he has one, and that it's just something he feels, and he thinks everybody should feel this. That's the evidence for a soul. And nothing has even come close to going beyond that. He's tried to present some arguments that go down lines, and from there, but yeah, no headway. No headway. If we assume that souls, and by the way, his argument that he continues with is flawed. I even granted his, just to demonstrate this, his assertion that souls exist, and he's saying, if a soul exists, blah, 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 then therefore God exists, or God is more likely to exist. And that's simply not true. For example, what he is calling a soul, this sense of self, or the identity that could possibly continue after somebody dies, is indistinguishable from what, for example, a Buddhist might say is involved in the process of reincarnation. And the existence of that thing, even though I have no reason to think it exists, is not in any way evidence for the existence of anything else, including a God. And yet he's going there. And it's because he's got in his head this specific idea of what a soul is. And if I could just come up with a way of proving it, it would somehow prove God. And it doesn't. You don't get from A to B.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, and it was a little frustrating, because I think the main idea behind what he was trying to get was he was afraid of being just a machine. He kept bringing that up over and over. If we don't have souls, then we're just machines. And if we're just machines, then there's no point in life. And I was like, well, machines are kind of based off of what humans perceive and what humans see themselves doing. I mean, we create a rake to rake leaves, but that's only what we would be doing with our hands. We create robots to put the tips on shoelaces because that's what a human would be doing. So technically, machines are basically ourselves, but made with other materials to do what we ask them to do. So I don't
ourselves or other things that we would do.
Yeah. I've always been baffled by religious people who seem to think that life can only have any sort of value whatsoever if we are just this one specific thing and can't be anything else. So we can't just be these biological machines. We can't just be
a sack of meat.
Yeah, we can't just be meat computers walking around doing stuff. No, we have to somehow be these little angels in training or whatever it is we are, just imbued with some sort of special magical substance that will go on after we die and live forever in happy land or whatever. I've always found that really, really strange. Like your life, I mean, you're living it right now, okay? And what gives meaning to your life it seems to me it would be the same thing either way, right? Whether we had souls or not. You have achievements, you determine what your goals are, you have interpersonal relationships with your family and your friends. All the things that you do in your life, that's what sort of brings value and meaning to your life. And I think that this is certainly one of the more insidious things about religion, definitely about Christianity, is that, what I see about religion is that it really is all about breaking down the individual self-esteem in order to reconstruct that sense of self-esteem with the religion at the center of it. And it says, now, without this, you're nothing. Whereas, until that idea was really programmed into the heads of believers, they would have had no reason to think that any more than anything else. I think it's pretty amazing that I'm this incredible biological machine that can do all sorts of stuff and do it very effectively and efficiently. That I'm the product, not project. Can't talk today. Crazy weekend. The product of eons of evolution. I find remarkable. And that appreciation of just life itself is stolen away from religious people.
One of the things that Chris said in an email that I addressed is this idea about the meaning and value of a life. Meaning and value are things that we imbue, characteristics that we imbue upon objects, including ourselves. But the theist has this idea of some grander meaning, as if there's some other intelligence out there that would value us, and that without this other intelligence valuing us, we are worthless, that this is all irrelevant, which I find
well, they see
very,
meaning
very
as being
sad.
Meaning as being something that has to be externally imposed upon your life.
Yeah, I find that very sad. It reminds me of the people who a psychologist might evaluate somebody who's in that position in a relationship as having dependency issues or validation issues where they can't do anything unless there's some approving figure to do this. But what Chris said, which kind of got my dander up, was that his view is that this life, this existence that we have, is all ultimately meaningless, even in his view. That the pain here is temporary, and that at some point you're going to graduate from this existence and go on to a better existence or whatever else, and what you suffered here will really become negligible and irrelevant. And I find that to be one of the most appalling ideas I've ever heard, that you believe, not you, and not necessarily Chris, because his theology is not very specific, and I don't want to get into too much detail without him actually being here. But there are people who believe that there's this God thing that created your soul thing, and then stuck it here in this meat sack machine thing for a period of X number of years to
judge whether or not it's worthy to go on to what next phase of its existence. Yeah.
If you really believed that was the case, then you should kill yourself. Now, and hang on. Hang on. Don't actually do it. I'm not advocating that anybody do this. What I'm saying is that if it was somebody's sincere belief that this existence is relatively meaningless and it is a place to wipe your feet before you go into the happy land, then the natural, logical conclusion from that is that the best thing you could possibly do is kill yourself. And religions know that this is the logical conclusion, which is why some of them have direct prohibitions against suicide.
Yeah, they figured that one out pretty early.
That was really evident. Well, wait a minute. If Happy Land is where I really want to be and all this is irrelevant, then if I kill myself and I go there now, oh, no, you don't get there if you kill yourself.
Yeah, because it's like God decides when you go. You don't get to decide when you go.
Yeah, they had to add a loophole in there because, it's painfully obvious to anybody. So for these people who've made up their own theology, who have these ideas that don't, where their doctrine or their beliefs don't include a prescription against suicide, I think it's painfully obvious that they actually do not believe what they claim to believe. They just hope that it's true. They just hope that there's something more than this. And while I think on some level it's fine to hope for more, on another level, it's not so fine. Because every minute that you spend hoping for something more is this minute that you're not spending appreciating what you do have, the one and only life you know you're going to get.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I mean, I know I spoke earlier about like these guys, Brandon Howes and some of these real extremists and saying, no, I think they really, really do believe this stuff that they're writing here. In terms of their political and their social attitudes and strange ideas about how the world seems to work, I think that they really do believe that kind of thing. They've just convinced themselves of it. You know, there's a pathology there to this level of belief.